This is a story from my father, which he lived through in his 20s. I'm going to tell it as if I were him. I was trying to get a better job so I could afford a better living. I was living in Baghdad, Iraq, and I had an uncle who lived in Basra. For those who don't know, Basra is a large desert area. My uncle owned a taxi business and I started working for him. He showed me which routes to take and which ones to avoid. You had to be careful, or it could be your last drive. There was one long road about 12 kilometers, which had only graveyards on both sides, one on the right and one on the left. He warned me about that road a couple of times. As I began working and a few days went by, one evening I had an old lady who wanted a ride home. Her home was past that graveyard in a small town. I initially declined, but she offered me a good amount of money. I accepted and drove her home. We arrived safely, and I helped her with her bags. On my way back, I saw two people standing in front of one of the cemetery gates. They were wearing hijabs and had their faces covered. I slowed down to talk to them, but then I remembered what my uncle had warned me about. I got scared and slammed the gas pedal. As I drove past and looked in the rearview mirror, I saw two men running after the car. Eventually, I made it home safely. An hour later, a soldier came running toward us, screaming in a very unusual way, as if he had seen death in person. We calmed him down and asked him what had happened, and this is what he told us. I was driving home from the military base to visit my family, and I found myself on a road lined with graveyards. I saw a person waving at me on the side of the road. As I got closer, I saw he was wearing the same uniform as me, so I stopped and picked him up to drop him off a few miles ahead. He looked human, completely normal behavior. He asked me if I had a cigarette, so I gave him one. Then he asked if I had a lighter. As I reached into my pocket to get it, I noticed his legs were no longer human. They were goat-like. I felt terrified and didn't know how to react. Then he asked me, "Are you scared?" I didn't answer. As he stared into my soul, I got so scared that I floored it, jumped out of the moving vehicle, and ran straight ahead until I found you. My uncle grabbed some rifles, and we went with the soldier to retrieve his belongings and check if there was anyone else out there. Eventually, we found the car. Both doors were open, and coming out of the passenger seat were four-legged animal footprints leading into the cemetery.
About 7 years ago, I got an invitation to attend my cousin's dinner party. I have never seen my cousin before, and only spoke to him on the phone. I was surprised that his family unexpectedly invited me after all these years. The invitation had an uncharted address that the GPS was unfamiliar with. I used a map and pinned its location. As I'm driving, I tend to notice how far I ventured off from civilization. Trees after trees, farms after farms. Where the fuck am I going? I finally found a similar address that might be it. Approaching the house, I notice how dull and dreary it looks. It's completely engulfed with leaves and branches. This can't be it, I said to myself. As soon as I entered the rocky driveway, my aunt and uncle came out to greet me. They seemed excited and welcoming. Walking into the house, I asked where my cousin is, answering immediately. He went to run a few errands. He should be back later. We spent the whole couple of hours talking about my mother and family. My aunt made delicious homemade pot roast that I finished off in minutes. After dinner, we played an enduring game of Uno. It was surprisingly fun and competitive. When we finished Uno, it was almost dark and still no sign of my cousin. Regardless, I had to leave. It was almost dark, and I would have trouble getting out of this dreadful place. My GPS was ineffective, so I asked my aunt and uncle the most efficient way onto the highway. They gave me a puzzled look. "I thought you were staying the night." I told them I couldn't, because I had work tomorrow and couldn't afford to miss another day. "It's much better if you leave tomorrow morning. Trust me, you'll get lost." I shrugged it off and told them not to worry. I'm an adept navigator. I could get out the Sahara Desert. Looking aggravated, they strongly advised me to stay the night for my own sake. At this point, I was getting pissed and irritable. I sighed. Fine, I'll stay the night, but I have to get up early for work. Both of them seemed strangely ecstatic that I was staying the night. As soon as they went to go get my bed sheets and pillows, I ran out the door and got in my car. I hastily pulled out the driveway. It took me a while, but I found my way out that depressing place. I got home an hour later than expected. It was 11 and I didn't want to wake my parents up. Climbing my fence and entering the back door, I noticed the kitchen lights were on. As soon as I took my first step in the door, I see my mom sitting there looking impatient. "I was at Aunt Deborah's, you knew this. Then why did she call saying you never arrived?" Till this day, I never knew who I visited.
My uncle told me this story, his personal experience with his friend Ronnie. One day, Ronnie was browsing on the internet. He read a story about a certain suspension bridge that was located close to his home. The website had plenty of pictures of the bridge and the surrounding area. The next time he met my uncle, he told him about the bridge. It was an old suspension bridge that crossed over a deep gorge. For some unknown reason, it was known as a spot that was notorious for suicides. Every year, at least 5 or 10 people would throw themselves off the bridge and died. Nobody could explain why. They said that the spot was haunted by the ghosts of all the people who had committed suicide there. When my uncle went home that evening, he decided that he had to check out the bridge. He desperately wanted to see a ghost. So, that very night, he set out for the mountains where the bridge was located. It took him about half an hour to get there. It was almost midnight when he arrived at the bridge, and there was not a single person around. It was dark and deathly quiet. The atmosphere was so spooky and ominous that it sent a chill down his spine. "People just fool others about this place," he muttered to himself as he cautiously walked to the edge of the gorge and peered down into its depths. He began thinking about all of the people who had thrown themselves down into the inky blackness. It was so fascinating that he felt forced to tell his friend, Ronnie, about it. So he pulled out his cell phone to call him. However, since he was high up in the mountains, he couldn't get any reception. Looking around, my uncle noticed a phone booth standing nearby. He went inside, put some coins in the slot, and dialed Ronnie's number. "Hello, Ronnie. Guess who's speaking?" he said. "I'm at the same bridge that you told me earlier. Why don't you join me tonight? It's so pleasant and quiet here." "Why not?" replied Ronnie. "I have seen that place on Google. Wait there, I am coming. By the way, where are you calling from?" My uncle laughed. "Oh, my phone is out of range, so I'm calling from a payphone." His friend was confused. "Payphone? There is no payphone there. If there was any, I would have seen it on photos." "Bullshit. There's a payphone on the way to bridge. Now don't delay. There are people waiting outside for their turn." As soon as he said this, Ronnie shouted, "No, don't move from there. I know that place and I'm coming in 15 minutes. Just stay inside payphone and don't put down the phone." "What happened? Just promise me you won't move from there. Whatever others say, just don't move from there." When his friend hung up, my uncle felt a wave of fear envelop him. He didn't put down his phone. The people outside booth were staring at him. The look in their eyes sent a shiver down his spine. 15 minutes later, when Ronnie arrived at the suspension bridge, he found his friend standing at the very edge of the bridge. He was holding his cell phone against his ear. He had no clue what he is doing. There was no phone booth and no line of people waiting to use the phone. If he had moved an inch, he would have fallen off the edge and died.